to start the stream. Ooh, that sounds like the... Oh, that sounds like the old...
Tony Caravan.
You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't. Quality, quantity, and variety.
Rock Flux.
Let's get this show on the road.
And let's open in that soda. Some changes are coming around the pike. Okay. Shit. Now, where did that go? There it is. I have no idea if there's bubonic plague on this or not. We're doing an experiment today. Okay? It's an experiment. You see the Rock Flux logo in the lower left-hand corner? Let's see if that damage caused the chair to go down a little bit. All right. I got my Hawaiian shirt on, Elvis style. Thank you very much. Muscle shirt. And a microphone. Give me a microphone. Give me that microphone.
I took a vow of peace. And now you want me to help you kill all these men?
Yes, Padre.
I'll see what I can do.
You'll notice that I've got a beer stein, beer mug, whatever you want to call it. It's a thing. And behind me, next to my arm, where the thumb is the old morning show mug. Why would I do that? And why? In fact, that morning show box probably could be canned. I think we're going to change this show to Tony Caravan Live Rock Flux. I'm also just drinking Dr. Pepper today to see if it's the Diet Fago that was messing up the old stomach. But, I instantly got a little bit of stomach ache after I just drank a little bit of that soda. But it's hard. But I had this, nice mixture of granola, raw honey, cinnamon, organic coconut, a little half of a plain yogurt, I don't know, something like that for breakfast. So I got a base in the stomach, CPU 69% and rising. Interesting. Very interesting, but stupid. Yeah, so I don't know exactly how I'm going to negotiate this big one, but I'm going to order I've got now available Tony Caravan Live. I'm going to be switching to rockflux.com so it automatically defaults over to the temporary Tony Caravan Live site, which I eventually will rebuild. I should probably do that live on the air. I will see if this metal cup that was frozen, I put it in the freezer and it holds more ice cubes. We'll see how the electromagnetic radiation deals with that. Now, I have a slight colorization on right now. And we'll see, what do you think of it?
Okay.
the same thing all the time. And I don't know. It's a matter of this or black and white. I don't know. This gives you a little bit of realism, maybe too much. Maybe I've got too much on there on the filter. This color correction, I can't take the saturation even down further. I could just eliminate it. Let's just try subtle. This is a little more subtle. Almost black and white. You like that better? My screen, the skin tone almost looks green though, like that. Or we can go, up to color if we wanted to. Closer to color. Like we used to be in the old days. It's up to you. I have these abilities to do. Oops, that's a U shift. I'll be sorry I did that. I got to try to get that to zeros. I don't know. I think maybe just, if we're going to, just the tint, I didn't like the green. I don't like people seeing the green, my real alien time traveling, body. I like pretending that I'm a human muscle man instead of I am just a traveler. Do you remember what movie that's from? I doubt it. So, anyway.
Grab another flashback from yesteryear.
Here's a flashback from yesteryear. So, it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to find all of the things that I want to find. Okay? Like, for example, I didn't get rid of the sea monkeys. They're still there, but they don't belong here. All right? I have this thing here. This is me being immersed in a beer. Drowning in a beer, complete with the bubbles. What do you think of that? Too many bubbles? Not enough beer? Well, let's see if we can move the bubbles up. That doesn't help much. Too much. Maybe there. Yeah, this is me in a bubbling beer. You like that? You like that? You like that? And but the flashback thing was I wanted to bring this up. I'm going to have to get rid of the bubbles for the time being. So I just found this by accident when I was just looking for some I keep doing that. When I was looking for some things. This is like my original. This is not my original, but this is one of my early websites. If you can see the copyright's like 1999. So this didn't mean it was made in 1999. It means this probably was 97-ish to 99. This was a real audio. Like if you clicked on the Tony Caravan live show back in 1999. This is 22 years ago. Okay. This is definitely before the iPad, right? The iPhone and any apps. In fact, I was creating apps at that point. In fact, one could say this actually was an app. Because what happened was prior to this, and I don't know if I have a copy of it, I had the format of this was I think I talked about this a long time ago. It was like an old 1950s or 60s car radio where you programmed and pushed the button to the channels. And that was the dial, and that's how you played my shows. Here's SonicNet. I don't think they're still around, but if they are, I'm sure they changed whatever they do. MSN Sidewalk Yellow Pages. That was a failure. These would have been 2 feature CDs. You can see that's like lounge music. eMusic Radio is where I had a couple of channels, and that was the first place where you could actually buy MP3s, and you would buy them for your computer. And I had this thing through KTEL, which that was all discontinued, where you could make your own custom CD. I think that was through KTEL. So you get KTEL music, you pay per song, like 99 cents. I don't know what it was. And you can make a CD. Excuse me. There shall be more of that. I can't afford to have this. And I'm kind of pointing with a mouse. I keep forgetting that. But anyway, on this, we're looking at this Tony Caravan Live signature thing. And, and there was a fireplace. That little thing in the middle was like an active fireplace GIF. And those VU meters actually would be moving. And where it says archives, obviously you can't see it, but they would have been like other shows you could have watched. The longest running lounge show on the net, it says underneath, Tony Caravan Live. It's virtually it'd be impossible for you to read that. But that was through, that was verified through like SonicNet. And I had a search through SonicNet there. And then, of course, I was written up in a couple of the tech magazines at the time of doing that. And I just want to show you this. A lot of people are like, he's talking about you shit. Well, no, what I'm trying to really bring home to you is I just happen to have records of this stuff that a lot of people, that's been lost. A lot of the early internet, people just don't even know it exists. They think everything began when Facebook started or something, in the mid 2000s, whatever. But the real idea is that 10 years before Facebook, Twitter, and the iPhone, and all those things really became, mainstream. I mean, in their infancy, various versions of certain things were being toyed with prior, but not. I'm saying 10 years before any of that stuff hit, me and others, there were some other people, not many. There was only like a handful of us doing this. Maybe 2 handfuls, be accurate. But that, literally 22 years ago and a good 10 years prior to the popularization of, smartphones and apps and, podcasting, because there was no iPod, there were no pods. This was a podcast. It was a music podcast. And I used to pay BMI royalties. So I played music. This was a music show, which later on had changed into a show similar to this. And I don't know, maybe simultaneously to this, I may have had the talk show. I forget. It's hard to say. Where I had I was also into, around that era, there was a group on Yahoo. Yahoo had groups then, and a lot of people now who I notice have made it onto Gaia and some of these other places and have sold these books. Nobody bought my books, but I was one of the guys on the original. And it was a group of people who were talking about all of these earth changes. In fact, I think that's what it was. The earth changes Yahoo group. And of course, all that stuff's gone, And, Yahoo was a much better search engine, even in its infancy, than Google. People don't realize that. Google was muscled out. Yahoo was muscled out by Google because DARPA, the government, was behind them. But yeah, that's a screen capture of 22 years of just something from like 22 years ago showing, and you could see that there were obviously archives there, that would go back. And this was playable best There's something there. I could even hardly read it myself, but it's something like sounds best on Real Player 5, or I don't know what it is. But we were using Real Audio, which doesn't exist anymore. But I've since converted some of these shows. So, just a little thing, I talk about these things from time to time. And it's kind of one of the reasons why I brought a little bit of color into it, because some of these images have color on them, and it doesn't seem as, stark and contrasty with if it's strictly black and white. The mug, the beer stein. You don't see those anymore. I mean, it used to be the thing, but I think you can drink a lot faster with them, which is a problem. It's great for bars. That's why they used to be in bars. So anyway, that's that. Maybe we'll come back to this, or maybe I'll put it aside. Let's see if I can put it aside without cutting too much of myself off. So it's a little bit of,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
So it's a little bit of a show and tell start to the show, but there's nothing new about that. And then, this is, as you can see, the Rock Flux logo. And so I already have, I've made some changes to the Rock Flux logo, but it's basically in tune with what's happening. So if you want to get one of these hoodies like this young lady's wearing, or a t-shirt, you can get stickers and tote bags and any of that stuff. It all supports the show. I mean, I only get a slight commission, like literally $1 or $2 if I'm lucky. Depending on a sticker, who knows? I probably get 10 cents. But wear it proud, and there's some other stuff there. It's not as if the morning show has disappeared. Okay? We'll get back to her in a second. Let's go to the title card. I'm sorry for that, but this is part of Tony Caravan Live. So as you can see, I've kept the morning show logo on there, and I have Rock Flux in the sky. And this says live from the North Pole. And this goes back again. This is another one of these things that goes back like 20 years ago. Like stuff we were doing that people still haven't figured out. They either haven't figured out how to do it, or there's nobody willing to do it, right? To put the technology together. Because it does involve, it's not that easy. You literally have to, have people at the North Pole or South Pole. You've got to have the setup, or you have to have access to various cameras. Some cameras aren't there. Anyway, that if you look closely at this photo, there's like these poles. And there's one that's almost a striped pole, like a Santa's, like a candy cane. It's kind of, off center to the, Well, that is the geographic North Pole. Okay? Because we used to do live coverage of expeditions to the North Pole every year. And what most people don't understand, and this isn't actually that long ago. This is within 10 years, but I mean, It was all after Al Gore's scary stuff, and they'd say there were going to be boats going through here or something. Well, every year the Russians set up a base, usually set up this base, not too far from here, but, a distance. And, basically people walk. They basically, dragging sledges, as they call them, to the North Pole. It's an expedition, and it's on foot. And the Russian base, which is on the ice too, this is all on the ice. This is the Arctic Ocean is basically frozen solid. And the Russian base, they actually land helicopters there. Yeah. And they have this whole base set up there with, giant tents, food tents, sleeping quarters, heated. It's like a lot of people don't know, like, this concept. I mean, they even do this. They used to do this up in Lake Erie. Like when Lake Erie freezes in the wintertime, people would go out and, well, ice fishermen know about this too, in all parts of, anywhere an ice fisherman fishes, particularly in Canada, but I mean in the northern states. But in the wintertime, you could go to, I think it was called Presque Isle or something like that. I don't know. But you could go to any of the shorelines around Lake Erie. And if you look out at nighttime, when it's like, when it's night is dark as the night's going to get, and you'll see these lights coming from the lake. And they're actually fires. They're campfires on the lake. There are people who are camping out on Lake Erie. Well, anyway, this is the idea to understand the thickness of ice. And we're just talking about Lake Erie, or we're talking about Canadian, fishermen and stuff. This is the Arctic, where it's like, -8 degrees Celsius when this picture was taken, actually, because I have the records from this particular photo. I have other stuff, but it's so hard to dig through my archives because I have tens of thousands of photos. It's the same with videos. I have so much video footage from expeditions, and so many audio, because we used to use satellite phones too, from the South Pole, the Himalayas, and the North Pole. And I just wanted to bring this up, people to understand that at the time, this was a live shot from the North Pole. And, and we used to do that. We had live shots from the South Pole, live shots from, the Himalayas and other remote regions of the planet. And people don't understand how thick the ice is and how this whole climate thing, and particularly now where they're trying to tie in all these, you get these 30-year floods, or you get these, they say it's a flood of the century or something. Just because you can't remember it or your grandmother can't remember it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's like I try to explain about hurricanes. Yeah, when you watch that old Humphrey Bogart movie, Key Largo, that was made. I don't know when that was shot. Let's say, I don't want to just talk out. Let's go with new tab and say Key Largo, Bogart. That should bring it up. Key Largo film, 1948 film noir drama. Edward G. Robinson was in that. That was a trip. Lionel Barrymore. Yeah, Lauren Bacall. Let me see if I get a big picture of this guy. Yeah. Just to bring him up on the screen. This is going to be difficult to do. I don't know. I wonder if I could just drop and drag him on here. Let's see. What did it say? You have dragged a URL. This will automatically be added as a link source. Continue. No, that's not going to work right. Let's just go back. This is just such a cool picture. It's a frog, say. Only I would know that one. It's a frog, say. Used to be a cartoon, or it was a Courageous Cat, or one of those cartoons. Anyway, Key Largo was, was our doll face. Daily image. Okay, yeah, we definitely want to get rid of this one. Properties. Browse. Bear with me. I don't know if this has, I have no idea what the name of this file is, but it's just, it's a short little file folder. So, you would think it would just be his name maybe, but Gilda, Alistair Sim, what's this one? No, that's the tooth. Sorry for the delay, folks. It's always worth it. Actually, this isn't really worth it because it's just for a laugh. Images. Yeah, here we go. Browse. Just bring it up. All right. I'm going to get rid of the title card for a second. Edward G. Robinson, because we've already shown Bogart before, and it's like, that's one thing, but, this is kind of,
Go ahead and shoot. You'll be doing me a favor. Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine.
But anyway, we've already done the Bogart thing. But in 1948, there was a movie called Key Largo, and Edward G. Robinson played like, I don't know, like Johnny Lucky or something weird like that. He had broke out of prison or just got out of prison. He always played these hard guys, like I say. And then there was a cartoon. I don't know if it was called Courageous Cat or not. And they used to have a frog on there, and the frog used to try to talk with like an Edgar G. Robinson, over the top accent, like, "Actually, the frog say, we're going to go in there and we're going to take care of this. And, all you people thinking about climate change and all that other stuff, well, the frog's going to take care of that, you say. Because here's the story. Key Largo back in 1948 was about a hurricane in Florida. And it was on down the Keys, down the Florida Keys, not Key West. It's a frog, you see. Frogs don't live in Key West. Well, maybe they do, but those Hemingway cats with like 6 paws live there. It's a frog, say. Anyway, so the frog, say. And so, say. But like I try to tell people is that people only seem today to know, well, A, it's what they're told or what they know in their lifetime, which is kind of the theme of this show. Though I think that the official theme of the show says of posers and clickbaiters. Which is just my usual dig at these YouTube. Every time I turn on YouTube, man, it pissed me off when I see these morons, right? Posing for their title card. And then it's clickbait. And it's all nonsense. And it's not based on anything. So anyway, there's, this isn't posed. This is like a real photo. Actually, Noah... This photo was from a Noah camera, that's set up at the North Pole. I don't know if they still do this because I've been out of this for a couple of years, but I was involved with it for many, many years. Slurping, belching. Where else are you going to find the truth? Who else is willing to do this? Clearing the throat. So what I was trying to get at is Al Gore said, there will be no snows of Kilimanjaro. The North Pole Arctic Ocean will be the Northwest Passage, right? It's like, no, man, it's still frozen. And it's worse than that. The magnetic North Pole, this is the geographic North Pole, that literally they have a pole there. And it's like the South Pole. They literally have a pole. People don't realize it. It's funny. It's funny. You go to the South Pole and there's a pole. Well, yeah, you got to put a pole there. But anyway, so that's the North Pole, that put the bigger pole, okay, in this photo of my title card. And like I say, I'm going to be morphing the morning show. It's still going to be a morning show because it's like 5:55 a.m. We've been on the air for a half hour, so this show started almost at 5:30 basically a.m. Eastern Standard Time on a Monday, July 26th in the calendar year 2021. And if you found this archive because you're buried under ice, a mile of ice, hoping to be rescued by one of those DARPA droids, ain't gonna happen. And those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, stay tuned to the show and future shows. So I'm just trying to tie in, these two things together, so it makes some sense to you. All right. So in other words, the frogs say, so in Key Largo back in 48, movie was shot obviously in 47, at least in 48, unless it was early 48. They used to put the movies out pretty quick back then. It was in the old studio system, there was always productions going on. And a hurricane in the movie, it wasn't the purpose of the movie. The purpose was this Johnny, I think his name was Johnny, the frog, say, Edgar G. Robinson's character, had ended up at this weird Key Largo, bed and breakfast type of place or something like that, where Bogart happened to be staying because he was like a captain of a little ship. Betty Bacall, Lauren Bacall, was the daughter of Lionel Barrymore, who was in a wheelchair or something, playing that character. And then there was these like couple of the classic wise guys, the guys with the suspenders and chewing gum, with talking that talk. We'll take care of them, boss. You want us to take him outside, boss? That kind of stuff. No, I'll take care of him, you say? And we might need him. And, check out Key Largo. It's kind of a timeless movie. I'm trying to organize this world's longest cord because I have to. My chair just dropped another, like 6 inches, 8 inches. I don't know. So the thing I said, and I've said this before, but again, you have to keep talking about this because it's a live show. It's a living thing. It's a living thing. ELO. That you didn't have many people living in Florida, in the 40s and definitely before, right? Because it was swampland, and the running gag was, here, buy some land in Florida. I almost bought land in Florida. You could buy it for like dollars an acre at one point, literally. And so that's how Disney ended up buying that whole Orlando area up and then turned it into this ridiculous. And I understand from people I know in Florida that the price of real estate in Florida is going sky high. So all these people are escaping high rents and taxes in New York, New Jersey, and other places, and they're going to Florida, and they're getting there, and they're buying these condos that are being hurriedly built, which is why one of the reasons why the lumber prices are up and lumber is scarce, because there's this building frenzy, despite the fact that we have so many empty buildings that, like mine, are 100 years old, that are built very well. Right. And they should just be being remodeled and, brought up to, standards, I guess, rewired or replumbed or whatever you want to do, reinforced. I had to put in a circuit breaker. When I bought this house, it had the screw-in fuses in the basement. So in order to get insurance, I had to put in a circuit breaker box. I had to get a plumber in, hook up my washer and dryer and stuff like that. And subsequently had my sinks and put in a new vanity. And then I put in a few supports on the beams in the basement, But anyway, that was, nothing compared to purchasing, a $600,000 condo or a $1.2 million home. People are crazy. And they don't really get a load of the Florida weather. Man, it stinks down there. It's hotter than hell most of the year. Humid. It's a swampland. It's just swampland covered over. And then they've got alligators and bugs and like wild pigs and all kinds of wild boars and stuff. All this stuff rolling all over the place. People don't know about that. Sorry, Florida tourist, agencies. But unless you're in some like resort area like Mar-a-Lago or something, or Miami Beach, though a lot of those buildings are getting old now too, because Miami Beach was there, though it was primitive back in those days, it started to pick up in the 50s, 60s. But what I'm getting at is that there were always hurricanes and flooding in places like Florida and along the Gulf. But you just didn't have high populations of people, high concentrations, population density, put it that way, in these areas. And so this is how people like suddenly ascribe all of these when a storm hits as if it's some climate crisis new thing. And the fact of the matter is this stuff was going on, and there were probably, it's like even in Tornado Alley, which, there's tragedies there every year. And of course the Mississippi cyclically floods over. I've seen 2 Mississippi serious floods where people lost everything, and they actually rebuilt on the spot. Could you imagine that? And twice they lost their house to the Mississippi over flooding over. And do you know that if there was a Mississippi flood today, they would call it because of man-made global warming? They wouldn't say, oh, yeah, another Mississippi flood, just like the last, how these things cyclically occur. Because they weren't alive. You see? It's not in their consciousness. It's like, me criticizing these posers and people, and even Joe Rogan, which every time I talk about that, somebody always comes to his defense. Fuck Joe Rogan, man. He's like a pussy. He's a girly girl. He's a girly boy. Girly. Right? He's girly. He's, somebody said it. I don't know who said it. He's like the Oprah for wimpy guys. Right? Talk, the girly talk. Listen to, long form talky, girly guy. Right? And he doesn't ask the hard questions. He doesn't. He lets people get away with crap. He's blown it. I used to watch him. And there's so many times he blew it that I just stopped watching. I'm going like, hey, man, you're fucking wimp. And that's before he was like on Spotify where now he's like, under censorship shit. I mean, if a guy wants to make a buck, fine, but don't pretend you're something else. Don't be a poser. All right? Don't be a clickbaiter. I was doing podcasts and interviews and stuff like that before Joe Rogan was. Before there was podcasting. Well, he was still trying to make it like a spice, as a stand-up comedian, trying to do 2-bit, scare the death out of people on some TV show or something. Goofy TV, right? Silly TV. That's like when TV fell apart. So fuck him. And all those people, the YouTube millionaires, people say, oh, you're jealous. You wish you. No, I do not want $1 million. $1 million is nothing. You can do nothing with $1 million other than it causing problems for you. All right. You may not understand that, but I am way freer right now. If I had $1 million, it would just it would ruin my life. I'd be back to like filing taxes, having to get my own health insurance, right? All sorts of other things. And then the money eventually runs out, so you don't have any, it's like, you don't get it. Living at the poverty level is what it's all about. I've made a lot of money in the past, but at this point in my life, $1 million would be a pain. Now, that doesn't mean I wouldn't like you to buy some of my new gear to support the show. That helps. That's a few. I'm banging my thing. That helps because that's a few extra bucks. That could go to keeping the show alive. But no, I don't want $1 million. But if you want to buy a hoodie, do so, because I get a couple of bucks from that. See, a couple of bucks works. A couple of bucks helps pay for your internet bill or your domain name. Keeps your domain. I had to pay my domain name for Rockflux yesterday. And then that's when I made these. This is going to be the new mug. So you'll see me. I didn't order it yet, but I'm going to order one. Maybe I'll order it today. But it takes about a week to get them. So sometime within the next week or so. So order a Rockflux mug. But back to this idea that I just want to finish this, because it's important, is, I don't know what this is. This is a picture. This is one of Trey Fergus. We feature his photos. This is one of his photos. He's probably out there maybe taking a picture today, but I won't get to today's picture. This is a picture down in the Carolina area of a sunrise yesterday. We had that Beauty of Nature show where we featured featured that stuff. Yeah, but this goes on all the time. This is every day. You know, and then someone else, actually, a relative of mine was had a bunch of pictures from like Vero Beach down in Florida. You know, and they almost look the same as, you know, and it's like all along the coast. You know, that's what you see. So it's a beautiful world we live on, and you should appreciate it and not get caught up in all this clickbait and posers and YouTube millionaires. Look at me, look what I did. Look at, you know. What I'm trying to do is the difference between me and them is I'm trying to show you real history that I was firsthand involved in, so I could verify it. See, I don't have to be a Rogan and bring on a guest and interview them and hear their story and like ask a question. You see? I have the firsthand stories and the photos to boot and the videos and everything. And that's what the difference between this show, there's no other show like this anywhere. And that's why it runs 2 hours, and that's why nobody watches it, because they don't want long form video, and I guess they don't want to know the truth. But I want to get back to just to finish this thought. So, you know, we've got these horrible floods, and it's a tragedy for people all over. I mean, I saw London is even flooding. You know, all the way into, you know, the whole area across, you know, from British, the UK into Europe, into China, like all across, straight across. You know, massive floods, failures of, you know, in China, failures of dams, you know, and whatever banks overflowing and city streets being flooded and the underground, you know, people in, you know, subway cars, as we call them in the U.S., but the underground, you know, in the UK. And in other areas, you know, it's just, you know, whatever they call it. Everybody has got a different name for it. In France, they call it something different. But I forget what they call it in France. It's a different name. But what I'm getting at is that this what we're experiencing, same with forest fires. What we're experiencing is a higher population density and building density. Okay? Lack of proper forest and water management to boot, because not taking into consideration these higher densities of people. And also not considering things that have occurred in the past, or that you may or may not have been aware of, and the idea that people are completely unaware of the long-term cycles. So I've heard many times in recently in the past year that there have been a lot of 30-year events, right? This has been the coldest spring in 30 years. This has been the hottest day in 30 years. This has been, you know, the classic storm of the century, man. They say that every couple months. You know, I mean, that's like so preposterous. It's ridiculous. That statement alone, and the fact that it's been covered in mainstream media, literally blows the Paris Accord climate crisis thing right out of the water. Because they're openly admitting that this is like the storm of the century, and like 100 years ago or 100 some years ago, prior to, you know, any of this, all these cars and all this stuff and all this factory output and stuff. Right. So it's just like they say it and no one listens to them. But what they don't understand is that there's like, so you've got the 30-year cycles, you've got 100-year cycles, but you have 400-year cycles. All right? And then you have like 1,000-year cycles. And then there's a 6,000-year cycle, and there's 12,000-year cycles. And those are just major ones that we are studying. And I say we, there's many of us are doing this, and there are peer-reviewed papers being published about this. And if you do the research, there's scientific, archaeological records. The science is there, okay? So for someone in Europe may look and say, you know, I lost somebody who was watching this because they probably are climate freak, okay? They don't want to hear that. See, even though I have all the information to show you, all right? Do you have a picture, a live picture? Do you have a picture of the North Pole? Do you know what the Arctic Ocean really looks like? Or do you just think, did you just hear something? You know, what was that? So, the geographic North Pole is covered with ice, so much ice that you can hike there, camp there, sleep there. And like I say, not very far from this, so many miles, towards just right on what would be considered Russian, you know, because everything's, this whole geographic thing, the way the earth is carved up. It's the Arctic Ocean, but they say, well, this is the Russian side, this is the Canadian side. And then the US, because we have Alaska, we think we could like come all the way up. Like it's goofy, right? And then I don't think in countries like Greenland don't get anything, you know. It's weird. It depends, you know, it's just a big power trip. You know, socioeconomic geopolitics. Can you say that? Socioeconomic geopolitics. That's what the world is run by. You know, decisions are made because of socioeconomic geopolitics. All right. And the World Economic Forum is basically, the Davos set is an organized crime syndicate. And the U.S. and other former nations, because this is a former U.S., are now corporatocracies. All right? Because they are run by big tech, big pharma, military contractors, you know, the whole thing. You know, I watched one of those Tom Clancy movies yesterday, just, you know, out of boredom. And it's funny, and I used to tell people this in previous videos and shows. And I just try to tell you that, you know, they bring this stuff up in, like Clancy always has lines in those things that support what I'm saying. And I always say, you have to understand, Clancy's writing what he's allowed to write, you know, in other words, you know, but when you see the CIA or these corrupt government officials doing things in a Clancy story, book, or a movie, what's really going on is like 10 times more fantastical and worse than these little things. Because their movies always end up, well, we found this secretary of this or such and such was a bad apple, right? They like that word, right? And it's like, you know, and then every one of them, but at the point of the matter is they don't understand. No, it's basically built into the system, you know? Okay. Socioeconomic geopolitics. So what I'm getting at, forget the posers, forget the liars, forget the people who are positioning themselves for political gain or trying to make a profit, like the people on TV. Remember, everything on TV is to sell commercials. So when you donate to Save America or Build Back Better, that money goes to TV ads. The TV ads then make the station more money, and that announcer you see on TV gets $20 million salary and a bonus. And the owners of those media companies are only like 5 or 6 major owners of all media, right? That's how it's, you can look that up yourself. And they're all multi-billionaires. They're billionaires. So what I'm trying to get at here is saying that no, the Arctic Ocean, the North Pole, is covered with ice. And not far from this picture where I'm showing you is you could actually land a helicopter. That's how thick the frickin' ice is. And I know because I was involved in expeditions for years to the North Pole. All right. And this is out of my archives, this photo. So get that through your thick skull. Secondly, in the top of the screen is a 22-year-old broadcast, complete with like a, this kind of neat interactive screen, right? Because you could like click on those albums and you could go and buy them. You could click on that eMusic radio and go there. You could use that search bar in SonicNet Music and it works. You can make a music request to me on this thing, make a custom CD, right? Listen to the latest show and there's archives, and that's something. And this one was, I have on the bottom of it, copyright 1999. That was from 99. When I used to put copyrights up, I just put up the year it was up, not going back to like 94 or something weird like that. Because like I say earlier, I had some different setups. Because I didn't always have these ads. I made money at this period of time that you see that image on the screen. In other words, there was click, if someone clicked on a banner or purchased something, you got a commission or you got something even just for a click through. And so I was getting quarterly checks from various sources, which basically paid my high internet costs, because in those days you had to pay for bandwidth. And, and it could be hundreds of dollars a month just in bandwidth. And I also was playing music, so I used to have to pay royalty fees. Yeah. So this is 22 years and at least 10 years before any of these YouTube posers and fakers and whatever. And before there even was a thing called, the iPod and the smartphone and apps. That was an app back then, right? So I just thought I'd share some of these things with you, just to give you an idea on this show. First of all, like I say, it's still going to be the morning show with Tony C, Tony Caravan Live. But we're moving towards rock flux because the planet is in a state of flux right now. And it's time to kind of really, ratchet up talk about this, because people are just completely unaware that we're facing this, near extinction event, and it's coming right at us. And that all of the things that you're being told on the media are mostly everything is wrong. All right, and what you don't know, you don't know. So, these are just things to think about. It's a frog, say. We also could have some fun, it's a frog.
Really funny.
Yeah, it's a frog. So,
Good morning.
Edward G. Robinson. Hey, Eddie. And of course, let's not lose track of our favorite. I could never get enough of that. Could never get enough of that. It's a pity they don't. I mean, they have these like they're particularly in Japan. They've done some of these things where they've made these like they're like sex bots type of thing. They like mimic, but they're for perverts or something like that. But if they really use the technology, if you took AI, current AI technology, they say it's like a GPT-3. It's a technical term. You could look that up yourself. But we're really probably technically up to like GPT-4 or 5 right now. And like I said before, it's like they really should take the Siris and, Alexas and stuff like that and let them, have them conversational like this company Replica with a K does, but does in a very, they're just trying to make a buck and get people to have virtual companions. And it's the same with people creating these robots. They're not going the full mile. And there's no reason why we can't have living, breathing androids walking around right now with really good conversational robots. It's just a lack of the will of people to do it. And again, it's hard. I don't. And I guess I'm going to just do it. Let's see here. Let me just do something because this new window. Just want to do something here. I don't know what this is. How you get to these weird photos. Sorry for the delay. Oh, come on, now it's freaking out on me. Okay, this is a good one. Again, this is going to require a weird search, but I'm going to replace this image, which is under photography, though it shouldn't be, with another one. Take a second. Because sunrises are beautiful things and nature is beautiful, but there's get into something. Why is everything so hard to find? No, that's my own ground cover. Sometimes we focus so much on one thing that we don't give ourselves a chance to see other things. Where is this thing? I'm sorry for this delay. I just put it in this folder. Oh, I can't seem to find it. It's not that. It's not Eddie Robinson. Screen. Let me do that again. Excuse me. So I'm sorry for the delay. This is important. It's all apropos to the show. This was the last image I had taken. And let me just see if it's in here. Suddenly it's shown. It's a JPEG file. It's showing. All right, let's try this again. Browse. Okay, I'm going to do this because I am very annoyed that it's not showing. So let's see if I can open it up in preview. Say export. Sometimes you have to do the strangest things in order to make this stuff work. And again, it's the year 2021, and there's really no excuse for this. That computers are so primitive. The same is, like I say, the same with Androids and, you know, and everything else. The state of, I didn't really want to cut out my face necessarily, but you don't necessarily need to see my face. Well, we don't need to see the whole forest. Okay. All right. So, you know, we looked at the beauty of nature, the sunrises, the beaches, and the shore, and we're all driven to the shore. Like many of us are anyway. I don't know why. You know, man, some basic things. Some people don't particularly care about the sea. I remember taking a girl one time on a trip who had never been out of her hometown, a simple country girl. And I took her to the shore, and it was the first time she ever saw the ocean, you know, and she was like, her mind was kind of blown, but it was like kind of her mind was blown, but she was like so overwhelmed that like she was almost like numb, you know, it was weird. All right. I'm being choked by my headphones. So what we're looking at on the screen right now is a forest. And, you know, in the foreground, we can see close-ups of trees, but then we see this mountain range, you know, or mountainous in the background. Rolling hills, I guess you would be best to describe them as. And, you know, of course, these things breathe in CO2. And, you know, people like to say, oh, the Amazon is the lungs of the planet. But, excuse me, all trees are. And wherever you go, and you know this, I mean, unless you live in New York City, but then you got Central Park. You know, and Central Park's pretty big. Remember, I lived and worked in New York City on 3 different occasions. And so, and I've been around. Central Park's pretty frickin' big. You know, but you don't have rolling hills there. But I mean, you got a lot of greenery, you know. But outside of any major city, you know, and some cities in the Pacific Northwest and stuff, you know, and different areas, I mean, you can actually, well, some cities all over the place, actually, but special northern cities. You know, from the city, you're just out on the outskirts of town, you can see rolling hills and mountain ranges. Like I say, where I am, in mid-Atlantic states, you know, like I said, about an hour from me or so, there's like an entrance to the Northern Appalachian Trail. When I get on my third floor, which is technically an attic, but at one point years ago, this is a 100-year-old house, probably close to 100 years ago. It seems to me like it was probably a kid's bedroom. The first guy who built this house probably was a family man. Because there's a floor up there, and instead of an attic having those walls that go at an angle down to the bottom, they're straightened out. In fact, I had to rip them. I had to rip out some of them because I had a roof leak, and so I had to rip out the walls so I could get to where the leak was, so I could put basically a Dollar Tree, bins down to catch the water. You don't want to deal with that. But when I get up on that third floor, and there's a window there. There's two windows, one small, but one towards the back of the house is pretty big, or decent size, normal size. I could stick my head out that window. There's no screen on it. And if I look around, because I'm high up at that point, really high up, the way this house is, it's like it has a thin, it's not very wide, but it's very tall. And around me are all these rolling hills. And I'm just on the outskirts of town, technically still a part of this city where I reside. And whenever I drove around the United States, and I've driven all over the United States, I've been in most of the contiguous states in this former United States. This is what I've seen, this picture that I've got on my screen right now. I've seen rolling hills and trees. Now, I know they have forest fires out west and stuff, and they also have La Nina, El Nino, Santa Ana winds, poor forest manager, and a higher concentration, higher popular density of people, and a higher concentration of developments, people building in forested areas. And it is part of the natural cycle of life of the trees, which are the basic life form on this planet. All right? That with lightning storms and various other things, that they will burn. And that is part of their way of surviving. Fire is part of a forest's life cycle. People don't understand that. And it's the same with these ridiculous storms, hurricanes that hit, the Gulf Coast and Florida and up into the Carolinas, etc. These things have been occurring for years. People say, "Oh, the increase in numbers." And why doesn't, when a person says that, where's the announcer saying, "How do you know?" Well, Noah says, well, how does Noah know? National, oceanic and, whatever. You know what I mean? How does Noah know? They don't. You don't know what you don't know. And so when these people come on the air and say these ridiculous things, they don't know what happened in Florida in, 1843. They don't know, what happened there in 1514. I mean, any year, or like I said, like this movie Key Largo was about a hurricane coming up into the Keys, the Florida Keys, and wreaking havoc in that area. Like, people don't know what they don't know, but they pretend they do. And this is this idea of what I'm trying to bring to you, particularly in today's show, by showing things that I did or know firsthand right? Or the real world. So the fact is that there were always hurricanes, there were always tornadoes, there were always floods, there was always hot heat waves, there was always frigid weather. There have been cycles. This is a planet of cycle. There's a cycle of life. Forest fires are part of the cycle of life of the forest. I saw an interesting thing the other day. A guy was talking about if all the insects died, right, tomorrow, within like 2 years, humans would cease to exist. Human life, and the planet, would be in serious trouble, right? And if certain other critters, right, creatures, but if humans cease to exist, all right, the planet would be just fine, right? And what people don't understand is that it's not our planet. It's the planet of trees and insects and other things. And our footprint, we are not crucial to this the sustaining this planet. The planet, we're just a thing, a bipedal animal walking around. That's all we are. Still got some ice cubes, which is nice. And so what I'm trying to get at is the forest, the trees, the plants, the crops, the greenery, the grass, even this ridiculous nonsense, that I bring up all the time. Even that stuff is breathing in CO2 and is exhaling oxygen, right? The primary gas in our atmosphere is actually nitrogen. CO2 only accounts for 0.004%. And look how green the planet is. I just pulled this random photo just to show you. But wherever I travel, this is what I see. Right? And so you've got these photos of these beautiful sunrises on the shorelines. You've got pictures like this, which you don't need even to see pictures of it. There are rolling hills and trees everywhere. Think of it. I don't care where you go. It's all over. And yes, there are forest fires, but they are a natural part of the cycle of life of forests. But they become more tragic to people who have decided to build cabins in areas and have not managed the forest, such as clearing the forest, putting in fire access roads, right? And understanding the cycle of life there. It's like, oh, this is a beautiful view. I would love to live here. I would like to build so someone looks at this picture I have here and then thinking, oh, we're going to build a home on the edge of that, beyond the first, hill onto one of those other hills where it's a little bit clearer. Let's build a nice big chateau-y cabin, A-frame or something up there. Well, there's no guarantee there's not going to be a forest fire, a lightning strike there. All right? It's the idea if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? The point is, if you don't build your $1.2 million, $2.5 million, chateau, that you only have access through some dirt road, and you haven't spent, like I've said before, spend an extra 10 or 20 grand and have the forest floor cleared of all the brush and the trees, the dead, the lower branches of the trees cleared of all this kindling and all this kind of thing. Well, then, yeah, you're opening yourself to the possibility that in the cycle of life, you're going to have a forest fire. It's nothing to do with man-made CO2. Right? This is a real picture. This is a current picture. I just grabbed it from some, nature site, So do you understand? And so you're listening to people saying things to you. They're telling you these things. But nobody in the media is ever questioning them. There's never a comeback. Joe Rogan never comes back and says, well, what about all the other forests all over the United States and Canada and the world and Europe? Right? See, nobody ever asked that question. Right? Instead, he just goes along and gets into this thing. Okay, this is going good because we could get a clip from this and put it on and have a JRE clips, and we could make a couple $100,000 on this, right? But don't do what that guy Tony Caravan's doing. Tony Caravan Live, rockflux.com or TonyCaravanLive.com, because he's a party pooper. He's telling you the truth, and then it doesn't work out right. It goes against what these people, the liars, are saying. Right? Now, I don't know who you are. Right now there's nobody watching at all. It's a typical morning. But everywhere you go, this is what you see. When I lived in Malibu, like I said, I lived in the canyons. I tell people I lived in Big Rock. So it was one of the canyon roads. You take it up, and it's pretty steep to get up into those canyons. But you're there, and my house had this beautiful wasn't like a full 180, but like 160 view of the Pacific Ocean. So I could watch the sunset over the Pacific every day. Every evening. Right? Had a hot tub on the balcony. Floor to ceiling windows in the house. That was the thing. You didn't have to put paintings on the wall or anything like that. In other words, we lived in that environment. But because we were on that canyon, and they had problems with fires and mudslides and all kinds of things like that. Cyclically, that stuff happens out there. But I had orange trees and, like conifer type trees, all kinds of trees from all over surrounding the house. And oranges the size of like grapefruits that I could pick from a tree from my porch. And I could walk. There was, places, there were plots there weren't houses because they were susceptible to like mudslides or, which cyclically occurred. And this is many years ago, before Al Gore and all that stuff. And so that you couldn't build on those places, on those certain places. So they were overgrown. So there were trees and all this. So the canyons were, had trees and, growth all over them. So even there, and that was one of the beautiful things why I liked the canyons better than the beach, because you could always go down to the beach because I knew people who lived down the beach. So if I wanted to go hang on the beach, I'd just call up and say, what are you guys doing today? And I'd go down and take my little cooler with my beer and hang out on the beach with these girls. You know? But the rest of the time I liked being up in the, you know, the canyons because, you know, we had that fresh air and, you know, and everything. And we still had the ocean view. So, you know, it doesn't matter where you go, you know, this is the world. Canada, they call it Crown Land up there. I mean, there's so much forested area. But see, it's so easy to take a television camera and to show some tragedy of somebody's, you know, wooden cabin burning down in some area and saying so many hectares of, you know, and then they love to say this is the worst, you know, and it's like, you don't know it's the worst because you only live so long, right? And with revisionist history, because that's the era we live in, you don't know. How do you know? Right? Do you ever see them bringing in some indigenous people? You know, some Native Americans and ask them? No, you don't see that like, you know, you see like CBS Evening News. And now we're going to bring in Chief so-and-so and ask him about, you know, what has the history of that part of the land. Doesn't happen. Instead, this is our national obsession. People believe in app. Sorry for that. I know that destroys things on certain channels. Places where I post my videos. Hey, you know what? I'm feeling better from not having that Fago. I think that stuff, you know, might have been the ticket. I know the famous cola one that I was taking was definitely the stuff that takes the paint off of cars. So this DP seems to be a little bit better. But anyway, the girl in this picture who's texting or whatever the heck she's doing, but she's no doubt texting, reading a text. That's the whole idea here. I purchased this photo, actually. It's a stock photo, but it's one, unlike other people. I didn't take it from YouTube or from Google. I paid for it. So I used it in a magazine or something I was doing at one point. It was part of my archives. And the contrast between this girl texting and the picture of my show from 22 years ago, like, let's look at that girl. I don't even think she's 22 years old. She might be, but if she is, that's all she is. So in other words, when I was broadcasting Tony Caravan Live, this show, you know, this ongoing show, which at the time, like I say, you can't read it. You'd have it because this was like a screen capture. It was like 72 DPI from 20 some years ago. It was just something I used as a thumbnail on some I don't know, it might have been a website I had when I was building websites for people. So I might have had a whole series of various little screen captures just to show things I did or whatever. So, you know, things people could choose before they created templates. So someone could come to my old website and look at different ideas and stuff and say, okay, yeah, that guy, he did. I see, yeah, I want to do something, you know. But anyway, so there are archives on here that obviously went back years prior to 1999, which was 22 years ago. The girl with the texting, who no doubt has apps on that phone, and that thing is her personal lifeline. I mean, she can live without it. How many movies and shows, like you see a guy, I was watching a show just the other day, one of those binge watching shows, and some criminal guy stole the guy's car and took his phone. He like knew the guy kind of, and the guy took his phone. He goes, "Don't take my phone. My whole life is on there." I think my whole life is on there. Imagine that. So what I'm saying is that before this girl was born, okay, before she was born, I was doing this show. Just a different version of it. And in many cases, like I say, I was doing multiple shows. Because particularly that eMusic radio thing, I had like a couple of channels on there. I no longer have them. I don't want to mention them because people may, I sold the URLs off a while back. And I don't know what people are doing with them. So I'm not going to give some free promotion to somebody, or if somebody turned it into something weird. It's like there's people, like if you allow people to, whatever you call it, leave comments. I noticed that, they leave these comments that are basically some kind of spam, filthy, or they're spam comments, right? Or some kind of thing. So if you see a comment and it's just like some URL dot something, and it's not a .com or a .net or something, don't click on it because it's some scam. But it's like that's why I took away comments and chat for a long time. Because I don't have the time to go sift through and to find and to get rid of, something that some moron, discovers somehow and puts on your comments. Right? These some functionally illiterate, whatever. Or some government bureaucrat or even somebody at Alphabet, Google, or YouTube does to just try to, play against you. Because I think they could use comments against you. Now, remember, the Constitution giveth and the terms of service taketh away. We live in a corporatocracy. There is no rule of law. In other words, the laws are ever changing because they're just made up by the corporatocracy. Terms of service, they're literally like the old bylaws in a corporation. That's what we live in, a corporatocracy. And which is overseen, and the puppeteers are the organized crime syndicate at Davos, World Economic Forum. But you see the contrast on the screen right now. A girl barely 22, maybe 21, maybe younger, who wasn't even alive when, I was doing, podcasting, right? And creating kind of apps. Right, because that's what these things were. They were interactive and stuff like that. They were apps. So this show, so-called show and tell portion of the show, tended to go beyond where I wanted to. So I normally don't do this to ream the show. It's usually right at the end. But I have a new Rock Flux coffee mug. So it's a little bit bigger than, if you see underneath, I just moved this thing up. Underneath is the old morning show like Camper's Cup, which is metal, which you can still get. But, this is the ceramic coffee mug, which is a little bit bigger. So it holds a little bit more. And, I thought I'd do something different for the Rock Flux thing, which is going to be taking over. And then, again, this logo is available in T-shirts, totes, stickers, hoodies. Get some. And then, of course, we showed this yesterday. But, is this you? And I'm going to get rid of the... we don't need to see the TC Live image right now. This is what they're doing to people. They're scaring them to death. For the sake of profits. Hundreds of billions of dollars of profit. I got up today at like 3:30. Laid in bed till 4. I just got a cattail in my hand. It wasn't the greatest sleeping weather because it was kind of like, it's like 60% humidity. Even I had the window open and stuff. But, I felt good. I walked to the grocery store yesterday, not to buy groceries, but to get some things for the house sort of thing, like kitchen scrubbing, dish scrubbing sponge and soap, bath soap, and some stuff like that. And I vacuumed the house, Swiffered, the parts that weren't covered with rugs. I don't have wall-to-wall carpeting in this place. I have some sectional rugs. So in between, there's like a lot of floor space. So Swiffered that up. Cleaned all the cat areas out. Did that sort of thing. And then I took a shower. And then I watched this Tom Clancy movie. Right? Which I say, like any of those movies, any of those thrillers, those Washington thrillers that deal with that stuff, it's right in your face and you just don't get it. You think the whole thing is fantasy. It's like, where do you think Clancy gets these stories from? And like I say, they're watered down. I lived and worked in Capitol Hill. I know a little bit about D.C. because I used to have, friends or associates or interact with different people. Like I say, at one point, I was interacting with one of the guards, one of the White House Marines from Marine One. Used to come over to this house when I worked for Roy Cohn. So, I used to have, I had a security clearance for a short period of time when I was doing some weird work. I talked about that once before. I'm not going to get into that. And what I'm trying to tell you is that they are watered down. When you watch those things, they're watered down. And so everything is wrong. You don't know what you don't know. Those shirts are available at TonyCaravanLive.com. Soon the rockflux.com link is going to also just forward to that. I'm just going to have one centralized site, which I'm going to build up. Right now it's just kind of like everything's there, so to speak. But don't allow yourself. You want to come on down? Come on. The cat. Come here. Come on. I guess it's getting to that time he's figuring I've been talking too long, you know? And he's right.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
It has been a long time. But I just want to go through all these things. So, you know, they're scaring people to death, which is pathetic. I am definitely considering about being buried into a beer. This is what this is, a glass of beer. So I definitely wouldn't mind being, you know, in a glass, so to speak, today. That's what I was trying to say. I had a good night's sleep. I feel good. And we didn't do the, the weather.
The Weather Watch forecast.
So what is the weather going to be like today? Currently, it's 68 degrees outside of the studio at 7:04 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the former United States. And it's looking like it's going to be mostly cloudy, though around 11-ish, there's a chance of the sun coming out. So it's a question. I usually like to go out around 10 to 11. I usually don't. Like by 11, I like to be in the house. 11 to 12. Because it just gets really hot and muggy, you know. And then it's like, Now tomorrow is supposed to be, Tuesday it's supposed to be sunny. High of 86, a low of 64. And Wednesday, 82 and a low of 64. And then towards the end of the week, there's Thursday, they're calling for a 40% chance of a thunderstorm, which probably won't happen. 77 degrees, 63 overnight. But then the weekend coming up, you know, for those of you.
Weekend weather.
A little peek at the weekend weather is that Friday, 75 degrees for the high, 52 for the low, and Saturday, 77 for the high and 59 for the low. So anyway,
Weekend.
That's your weekend weather, and
The Weather Watch forecast.
and that was your forecast. So I don't know, it's going to be hot for a couple of days, but this coming weekend, you know, it's going to cool down. At least in this part, the mid-Atlantic states, you know, in this area. And I don't need to hear stories about people in Florida. You know, this is kind of funky. I'm inside a beer glass right now. Tony Caravan. So many neat things you can do with this, this program I have. But it's hot in Florida, and I believe there's a hurricane coming. Okay. We've had tornadoes. There are forest fires, and there are floods that are across Europe through Asia. And what people need to do, and it's the same with them talking about trying to fix the infrastructure here in the U.S. of A., former U.S., is that you have to take into consideration population density and cycles and grand cycles. The problem we're having right now is that the Earth's magnetic field is very weak, right? And the sun is magnetically, weak. And that we're susceptible to all sorts of things. And the CO2, 0.004 CO2 is not hurting anything. It's just helping the natural life form, the major life form on this planet, which I was trying to explain before. All right. Which are the trees Let me get rid of the beer thing. This is the natural life form of the planet. Okay? The natural life form of the planet. Without humans, they'll be there. Without humans, there'll still be forest fires. All right? Without humans, there'll still be floods. But the planet Earth, don't say save the planet. The planet's going to be the planet. There'll still be all sorts. There'll still be hurricanes, there'll be tornadoes, and there'll be floods. There'll be cold weather, there'll be heat waves, all of that stuff. But one thing I can tell you right now is that we're heading towards a 12,000 year cycle, a solar cycle that 12,000 years ago was a near extinction event, and 24,000 years ago was a near extinction event. The government is well aware of this and has made preparations for itself. The ruling elite have made preparations for themselves, not for you. There are 8 billion people on this planet. The majority of them live in Asia. Okay? They don't care about them, and they don't care about us. And everything we see and everything we hear is all some kind of diversionary tactic. You know? I mean, these people, they're either functionally illiterate like the majority of the other people out there, or they're just, narcissistic sociopaths, psychopaths, and sadists. That scared somebody away. Now, people come in and they hear a thing and then they're like, they run. This cracks me up. People are so afraid of the truth. The truth is so foreign, to their existence. Like, they just can't believe it. Like, this title card. They can't believe that the North Pole, that not far from here, you can land a frickin' helicopter, and that people camp out and sleep on the Arctic Ocean. And that 0.004 CO2 hasn't turned this into the the Arctic Northwest Passage, or not Northwest Passage, but the, Northern Passage, or whatever you want to call it. No, it's still frozen. It's thick ice. I mean, come on. Everything you know is basically wrong. And what you don't know, you don't know. You're being lied to, deceived. And the people you're donating money to, they're getting richer. The media is getting richer. There will be no change. I heard somebody the other day put it very well. Might have been on that Tim Pool show, a guest of his. He was asking about like the 2022 elections or something. I mean, anybody who votes is another exercise in futility. Anybody who donates to a campaign it's an exercise in futility, a waste of money. You're just giving the announcers profit and the people who own the media companies more profit. Because what the point is this other guy made is it wouldn't even matter if the so-called, Republicans took back the House. Because the Republicans had the House in 2016 and the presidency and the Senate. Do you understand? And the media machine, the corporatocracy, big tech, big pharma, military, industrial complex, the Fed and everything else, the corporatocracy basically kept them from doing anything they wanted to do. Oh yeah, there were some executive orders, and they built part of the wall, 400 to 500 miles. All right. There were some interesting things done with vets, but of course, the military industrial complex, needs the vets. They need to have that image that they're not abandoning their cannon fodder, because that's all you are when you're, to them. They just want to sell ammunition and missiles. They're just in it for the money. They have no, it's another thing when you watch these Clancy movies and stuff. That kind of stuff comes out. It's all about the money. Remember I said earlier in the broadcast, socioeconomic geopolitics. That's how the world is run. And the world's run by an international crime syndicate. And so things like the former United States Congress doesn't mean anything. They could build all their fences, those paranoid fucks. They're fools. Nobody cares. Nobody's interested in it. What do they call this, the January 6th event or something that they've been talking about? Like, look to me, from all the photos and videos I've seen, it looked to me like nothing, right? It just looked to be like, there was, a bunch of people hanging out, came into the Capitol, and then the thing was over with. It was no it wasn't the French Revolution. And 90% of the people there were just observing it like every other event, holding up their cell phones and taking pictures. And a couple of goofwads and agent provocateurs, let's not forget that, were the ones that basically entered and did some stuff. But it was like a handful of people who really, And so the whole thing is a gag. So everything you know is wrong. What you don't know, and you're still believing this happy horse shit. Anyway, I hope you have a good morning. I feel sorry for you if you have to work. Because I'll tell you what, there's no more better than the freedom, all right? The freedom of breaking away from the corporatocracy. And remember, this is the truth, 30 frames per second. It's why it's a highly unpopular show. It's probably the most unpopular show on the internet. But it's the truth, 30 frames per second. So go to my site, TonyCaravanLive.com. I've got a local site. I've got other sites. Check it out. There's going to be some changes coming up in the coming weeks. But I've got like 200 shows or more. I forget how many consecutive 7 days a week shows. Check them out. There's some interesting stuff there. Wake up to the world, reality.